Russ of Aquariumex here. Excited to do a live stream at a different time. That can be fun. It helps me to catch some of you who don't otherwise have an opportunity to catch the stream. So when I do have that opportunity, like I do today, I like to do that once in a while, just for you. So hopefully you'll all be able to see this. Check it out. Look at my, oh, gotta be careful. Look at these Armadillidium gestroi. They are really popping for me, doing really well. Newt, Scamander, hello. Nezogaster, greetings. Good to see you all in the chat there. As you can see, these Armadillidium gestroi are really breeding really well. The cool thing about this is that if I go through, for example, the moss, there's a bunch in there too. I mean, they're everywhere in the substrate, these Armadillidium gestroi. Quickly becoming one of my favorite Armadillidium because not only are they fairly large, I mean, that's a pretty big isopod. It's not even fully sized yet. They do really well as far as breeding goes once they get started. So, hello Jordan, welcome. I'm glad you're able to join in. I know that sometimes that works better for you when I'm at this time, but yeah, Newt, it is an odd time. Just happens to work out pretty well for me today. Not common, but Toilet Pete, hello. Brant's Pet Paradise, hello as well. Got 11 people in the house. Nice. And let's see, Mr. Devil, hello. Oh, doing pretty well. Pretty excited about the species. Most fantastic colored Armadillidium, and I probably mentioned this before, but it is thought, although I don't know a lot of research has been done on it, that these are actually mimicking an aposematic coloration of pill millipedes. So it's Batesian mimicry, where the isopod itself doesn't actually produce anything scary, no repugnatorial fluids or anything like that, but it looks enough like a pill millipede that does that predators tend to leave it alone. So it's kind of laggy, huh? Okay, hopefully it'll warm up a little bit. I'm trying to think what I could do at this point to help with that. Probably not a ton, but I'm hoping that it'll just sort of catch up. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to try. It might be kind of a busy time or something like that, but I'm going to try something else. Let's look at some other critters here. Pardon my leaves as I. Yeah, and they do look a lot like a specific species of pill millipede, apparently. You can see my new leaves. All right, so Brant's Pet Paradise, you have a tailless whip scorpion. It's not eating very well. So that's, sorry to hear that. Let's see. Let me know what species of tailless whip scorpion you have. Are you feeding foods that are about the same size as the pronotum? And then are you offering, what kind of foods are you offering? They tend to like things like roaches and crickets better than things like mealworms, for example. So that may help. You can also pre-kill the food. If you do pre-kill the food, you need to kind of leave a scent trail. So touch the pre-killed food to the wall and then kind of drag it down the wall of the enclosure where the tailless whip scorpion is going to be hanging out until you touch the ground, and then leave it there, and they will follow that trail and get pre-killed food if they're, sometimes that works if they're not eating well, so hopefully that helps. And good, I'm glad to hear that, Newt, that is doing better. So, Lonnie Dupre, excellent, picking up some isopods and some Pac-Man and a Pac-Man frog. That's awesome. Oh yeah, you love my leaves, huh? This is my leaf litter I just baked. They're on the shelf. I want to know these are not the only ones in there by any means. I fully expect to see some more in here. Oh, there's a little one, but I bet most of them are going to be under this one here. Yep, a bunch more under this one. So these Porcellio expansus, these came from Jordan and from Isopod Source. So thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Isopod Source, for these. They are so cool, and I love the fact that they're breeding. And Mr. Devil, thanks for joining in. Maxwell Aquino, excellent having you here. Kingdom of Animals, hello. I'm really excited for when these get big, because they're not tiny. I mean, you look at that compared to my finger. They're not tiny isopods already. They're quite wide, quite big. The one next to my pinky finger here is probably one of the bigger ones that I have so far, but by no means is that anywhere near the adult maximum. They're going to get a lot bigger than this, which is exciting. This is probably the widest isopod that's commonly kept of the terrestrial isopods. Probably the widest of the giant Spanish Porcellio. Not as long as Porcellio hoffmannseggi or magnificus probably, but close and definitely wider. And the way that their body is put together, they just look bigger. So, and thank you, Kingdom Animals, for dropping by. And let's see. Okay, Maxwell, I say Aseno. Is that how I say it? Awesome. If I said it right, let me know. If I said it wrong, correct me again. I like to try to pronounce names correctly, and I do fail often, but I'd like to give it a go if I messed it up. Okay, so let's go. Kingdom of Animals. I have to check if Porcellio werneri is on my list of. I would love to get that species. I can't remember if it's on my list of isopods that I can have shipped in. It's a kind of a short list, unfortunately. I mean, not super short, but there's a lot on it that I can't actually get. So, I mean, a lot that aren't on my list. And Josh Retu, hopefully I'm saying that right. First time in a live stream, awesome. There are isopods where there's leaf litter. Would that mean they're safe to use? To some extent. I mean, that's a good sign. Let's put it that way. It's a good sign. It's not going to be 100%, safe just because you see that, but it's a very good sign, and I would say I'd much rather do that where there are isopods than where they're not. So generally, yeah. Okay, let's see. So Maxwell Aquino, is that how it is? Aquino? I'll work on it because I want to make sure I get it right. Okay, Brant's Paradise. Damon variegatus, what size feeders would you recommend? Just the same size as the pronotum, which is that thorax-like structure that they have. They don't have a true thorax in the way that an insect does, but they do have a pronotum, which corresponds roughly to the thorax. That's the structure you want to say. If the food item is about that size, that's what we're looking at. That's what you want. Also, sometimes it's actually a good idea to keep them in a planar enclosure with not so many things that make it busy, you know what I mean? A lot of decor. Mine has it has 3 walls covered in cork, and then it has one like diagonal piece of cork. Aquino. Okay, got it. Thank you, Maxwell. I got it. Aquino. I can do that. So hopefully that helps. Food about that size. And crickets and roaches are good. Those are usually the best. Elaine Smith, thank you. Glad to see you here. Let's look at some more isopods. These are my Porcellio hoffmannseggi black. They're still quite young, but these are the ones I got from Scott at Finger Lake Feeders not too long ago. Just like a couple of weeks ago, was it? Something like that. And they're starting to look even darker than they were when I first got them. I think there's probably some under here too. He sent me a good number of them. They're looking good. I'm really excited to see these reach full size. I think it's going to be really cool. So, very cool isopods. Let's see. Flowers Home, hello. Okay, so Maxwell Aquino, got it. And yeah, Brant's Pet Paradise, you do want a lot of vertical cork so that they have lots of molting, potential molting platforms and just places to hang out, but that should help some. And Frank the Tank, formal top hat, nice to see you here. They kind of do look like the ones from Bug's Life. And I think they're doing really well. So Slav Pepe, I've wondered about that myself. I have kept puffers in the past. I don't keep any puffers now. But I've wondered about that. And I think that some isopods, I would say something like Porcellio ornatus or dairy cows that breed quickly would be a great potential puffer food for some of the appropriately sized puffer fish out there. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so Dragon Udo, hello. Crystals, Pets and Plants, Dark Reptiles, and Crystal, yeah, isopods can have fruit. Most fruits work fairly well. You don't want to give a lot, and when you do feed fruit, you want to put it on a surface like cork bark or a magnolia leaf or something like that, so that it's not straight on the soil, because if it is, it tends to mold more easily than some other foods. So, Tina is new to the channel. Want to know what interested you the most in raising isopods and having multiple different cultures? What would you say your favorite has been and why? Well, Tina, great questions. Raising isopods, when I first started out, my main interest was in the bioactive aspect of being a cleanup crew in the ecosystem of a bioactive enclosure. That was first what I was doing, but then I realized, oh, there are so many different isopods. And when I started in the hobby, 8-ish years ago, there weren't as many that you could get, but there were a few, and I started getting interested in those. And as they came, as the hobby just kind of exploded, I thought that was pretty awesome. So I thought, well, there are so many different, unique, interesting species and morphs, color varieties, whatnot, that I want to try some more. And I'm going to show you some of those. These are not just Armadillidium vulgare, as you might think by looking at these. What has been my favorite? Really hard to say. I think I have some favorites. Like, I really love dairy cows, really love milkbacks, really love Armadillidium gestroi, really love zebras, really love Porcellio ornatus yellow dot, really, oh, I could just go on, that's the problem. But, so it's hard to say. But I'm thinking of making some videos about my favorites for particular applications. I want to show you these guys. These are some Armadillidium punta canas. These are mostly young ones, but they're doing really well, and you know, I love the color variation in these. Some of them are just wild types, and some of them have this sort of almost metallic-y, like coppery or gold sort of color to them. So I'm really liking them, and there's variation in those. Some are lighter, some are darker, and whatnot. So pretty cool. And this is just Armadillidium vulgare, but used to be misidentified as sordidum, Armadillidium sordidum, but it's Armadillidium vulgare, and it will cross with other Armadillidium vulgare just fine. All right, so let's see. Oh, Nezogaster, going to go hunt some millipedes. Awesome. And Dark Reptiles just got powder blue isopods. Want to have no monkey. Hopefully you'll get some soon. Sometimes it takes them a little while to settle in, but powder blues are hard not to breed, so I'm sure you'll get some fairly soon. Gaetan, welcome. High black zebras would be cool, as long as they have some markings on them. I wouldn't like them if they were just plain dark as much, because I don't like the patternless isopods as much. I like some pattern to them, which is part of the reason I like these guys. There's a lot of pattern. Let's see. So I'm going to let these little guys crawl around for a minute while I talk. David S. says, how are your rubber duckies? Doing well. I've got at least 2 broods of babies going on right now, possibly more than that. They tend to have broods fairly often, every month or so, so I might have another brood. They weren't doing really well at first, but they're doing fine now. They're breeding, and so I'm excited about that. I used to have granulatum a long time ago. Unfortunately, I don't have granulatum at this time, but hopefully I will get some in the future. And Rhopalomeris carnifex, don't have that. That is a pill millipede, as you know, but maybe not everybody else knows that. Don't have that species. I would love to get them someday. And Jeff Chambers, did you see any Punta Cana isopods when you were there? Okay, well, thanks, Maxwell Aquino, for joining in. So Josh, yeah, I think a lot of us do the bioactive enclosures, and that's how we get started. I agree. Look at these tiny little ones in there. They're breeding really well. This enclosure that's just kind of popping. Okay, thanks for joining in, Newt. Chris, oh, maybe you're just saying see you to Maxwell. Okay, maybe you're going to stay in, which would be great. And I agree, Crystal, the colors is awesome on these. So Dark Reptiles, morning geckos, upgrading, going full bioactive. Going to do a YouTube video about it. Awesome. Yeah, morning geckos do so well in bioactive. That's where I've kept most of mine. In the past, I used to keep the juveniles in non-bioactive enclosures, but not anymore. I moved them all into bioactive enclosures. They've been in there for years, actually, now. When I started keeping them, it was like 7-8 years ago. And for a while, I didn't have the babies in bioactives, but I have for the past like 7 years, 6 years, something like that. And I have never had Philoskia muscorum, but I've heard they're pretty cool, but a little bit tricky. And crystals, pets and plants. Bumblebee millipedes having babies. That is so often. Dark reptiles, good isopod for bioactive that breed fast. Porcellionides pruinosus, one of the best. Unless you're doing with a really humid, low ventilation enclosure, that's my go-to to suggest. Okay, and so Davidus, the rubber duckies, I had to move them into a smaller enclosure to get them to do well, to be honest. And they do like fish food as a food. Oh, what is that? There's like a hair in there. That's not fun. Okay, so check these out. These are California mix Porcellio leavis. And I got these at the Reptile Expo at the beginning of this month. And I've already got monkey in here. Let me see. I was digging around in here a little bit. Well, not digging around, but, you know, looking. And found some the other day. I don't see any right now because I guess they're camera shy, but yeah, they're already breeding for me. So I'm excited to work with these. They're really interesting. They're called California mix. They're single source. In other words, this is not a mix of different morphs. It's just one morph that throws a lot of variety. Some of them look like wild type, some of them look white, some of them look sort of like milkbacks. So, despite the fact that I'm not seeing any monkey, let me dig just a little bit in the moss, because that's usually fairly safe. Nope, not seeing any right now, but still, very excited about that. That they're doing so well. Let's see. Pulling up the chat. And I see, Jeff. I guess that would be distracting from finding isopods. Oh yeah, Dragonudo. The Magnolia Leaves are really awesome for isopods. Not only do they take a while to kind of be used, but they're very resistant to you know, just disappearing instantly. They take a little while. And apparently that's supposed to mean they're more nutritious. Okay, so this is my Milkback and Orange project, folks. Back in, it was August 13th, I put some really small juveniles in here. And let's see if we can see any monkey in here. There are monkey in here. Just gonna check it out, see if I can find some of them. I finally started spotting a few of those. Oh, there's one! See, they're too small on that piece of zucchini or squash or whatever I threw in there. There are a couple of monkey on there, it looks like, and they are too young to tell whether they have successfully crossed between the two morphs. They're the same species, just different morphs, but they're too young to tell. But hopefully they'll work. Newt. Rubber duckies like to eat fish food. Out of context, yeah. I could see that being confusing, for sure. How long do duckies take to grow to adulthood? I've got some small duckies just started to show the dark colored middle. You know, I haven't really paid attention to that particular question myself. I'm not sure. That's a very good question. So now I want to show you my red tigers, my Cubaris red tigers. They're doing well. And I'm going to actually switch them into a different bin because I think they're kind of outgrowing this bin. But I wanted to show you how they're doing here. There's some of the red tigers right there. You can see some of various stages of development. And I'm going to move them into this other bin. So I have some substrate here, and I'm just going to do that while we have a bit of a chat. So you get to see me do the whole process. I'm going to lift up the camera just a little bit, and we'll be able to see the process as I move them over. Hopefully that's kind of has some interest for you as we talk, and I'll try to answer your questions as we do that. So sorry about the glare there. We'll take care of that in just a second. All right, so trying to catch up here. Dark reptiles. What is your preferred morning gecko food? like powdered diet. I use Pangea Complete with insects for them. That way I do give them insects as a supplementary food, definitely, but I don't need to, I guess, in theory. I do anyway, but it's a more balanced diet because it's got the insects for them, so that's what I generally use. So Josh, you've been restraining yourself from stealing the leaves. Well, they'll probably thank you if you just go rake a bunch up into bags and take them home with you, I'm imagining. Because you don't want to take them right off the tree anyway, because they're not going to be nutritionally the same. But if you just take up the dead ones, they'll probably thank you. So that's one way to look at it. Okay. Yeah, Lonnie, I hope they end up working. I'm really hoping the same thing. We'll see how they go. That would be really cool. You know, several people have sent me messages in Europe. They have both orange dairy cows and a pied orange that look fabulous. Where did I put that moss? I have some soaked moss that's going in here, but now I don't know where I put it. Where did I put the moss? I must have set it down somewhere. I'll put the moss in after if I have to. It's already soaked, so shouldn't be a huge deal. I'm going to moisten this down though, because that is a big deal. I don't want the poor isopods getting too dry. Cubaris really like, you know, a fair bit of moisture, more so than some others. So I want to make sure they get enough. This spray bottle is not doing what I want it to do. Oh well. Okay. So let's take a peek at these guys. That's where their moss is going. Peek one more time. There's a couple of the adults there and a few little young juveniles. Here's some more on this piece of bark, a couple different ages there. And let's see, any more hanging around on these smaller pieces? Not on that one. I'm going to move some of this moist leaf litter so that they can end up on the moist leaf litter, and then I'll put the moss down. Of course, I'll take the moss from their normal enclosure too. Here's another piece of bark. Okay. See, the moss in their enclosure is kind of waterlogged a little bit, which is fine. It's got some of the adults are hanging out in there too. And I think I may have overestimated the amount of substrate I needed to put in here, but they do like deeper substrate, a lot of the Cubaris. But I want to make sure I get all the substrate I originally had in here too, because there are bound to be isopods in it. All right. So here we go. Okay, well, Newt, thank you for joining in. If you've got to leave, you got to go, but I appreciate being here. Isopod Hunter, excellent. William Horn. And, oh, Brian Davidson, he was telling me about the jumping spider. Yeah, you know, I have tried that. I tried offering a powder blue to my jumping spider, and this is what happened. The jumping spider did successfully capture it and killed it, but, and this is the weird part, it didn't look like it wanted it. So instead of, you know, hanging out with it and really chewing on it and getting all the juice out essentially, which is, you know, how jumping spiders eat, that's what I was expecting or hoping at least to see. That's not what I saw. I saw the spider pick it up, hang with it for a little while, and then drop it as if it were not very interested. So that doesn't mean that's true for all jumping spiders. For me, it was a Phidippus audax I tried that with. And I was just thinking, you know, it's a softer bodied isopod, probably along the same lines you were thinking, Brian. Softer bodied isopod might well provide an easy food source, and, you know, so they're technically capable of eating it. One good thing to think about, it seems, but I mean, it dropped it for a reason. Whether that it found it unpalatable, it was not really able to eat it effectively, it's hard to say. But it's important to remember that jumping spiders have very, very pronounced personal preferences. So it could be that my particular jumping spider didn't like them, and yours will love them, possibly. So, good thing to think about. Wow, dark reptiles. That sounds like quite an interesting setup. So you're going to just have all females in there? How that's going to work? I'm curious. For your crested geckos. Crystal, you got 3 jumping spiders. I remember saying you had some, and didn't you have one that had babies? Are these babies the one you had? William Horn. Your millipede hasn't shed the skin in 8 months. Well, it depends on the type of millipede and the age of the millipede and so on. So it's not necessarily bad. It's not, it can be, but it isn't necessarily bad. And let's see. Best rhino beetle to get. Depends on where you are. Remind me where you are, Theropod Hunter. And let's see. Frank the Tank been trying to sell white spot assassin bugs on eBay, but nobody has been buying. Have you tried arachno boards? So dark reptiles, big plants. How about bird's nest fern? Bird's nest fern gets big. That'd be a good one. What else would be good? A lot of the pothos get really big, or the Chinese evergreens get big too. It is indeed Tuesday. It's kind of... Oh, okay, theropod. In the UK, okay. So, rhino beetle. Then I'm not sure, because the only rhino beetles that we can get here in the US really are Dynastes granti and Dynastes, what's the other one? Can't remember the species name of the other one, but they're the native ones here. So, I'm not sure. What would be the best one in your particular location? I think, sorry, I'm just kind of moving things around as I go here. I think this will work out. I'm almost through the substrate, and we can see all the different ages. You can see the springtails kicking around in here. I think that these are doing really well. So if anybody has tips for the Dynastes you can get in Europe, you can actually, I mean, you have access to a lot more species than we do here. There's not much in the way of rhino beetles we can get beyond those 2. I think just 2 species. And dark reptiles in Sweden. Okay, so you could, you can probably source bird's nest for no problem, which I think is a great plant for terrarium. Looks awesome, gets big. Okay, so Jay's crazy obsessions. I am just doing something. I took part of the day off today and wanted to do the stream early for those of you who don't normally get to catch my stream, because I don't get to take Tuesdays off very often, or even parts of Tuesdays off very often, and I get a chance to do that. So I figured there are some of you who can never attend the stream when I do it at the normal time, so this is for those of you who can't, and for those of you who can, make it to both. That's awesome. But for those of you who can only make it to the weird ones, got to do that once in a while, you know what I'm saying? Stag beetle, native species protected, so it can't be domesticated. Ah, yeah, that could be problematic, for sure. You want to make sure you respect the rules there. Do you have Lucanus, what is it? Oh, I can't remember is it a Lucanus, the one you can get? The stag beetle that you can get locally, or that not locally get, but you can keep. I'm thinking it's not a Lucanus, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, Frank has Dynastes granti. Awesome. So, Cruxity, what kind of isopods do you have? Some isopods just take a while to get started once they've moved into a new setup, and some take no time at all. I mean, I've had isopods arrive with Monkai running all over the shipping container. That happens, but most often you have to wait a while, and it can be anywhere from a few days to a few months. So I'm curious as to what species you have there. I'm going to put a couple of pieces of cork in here as well with these guys. I'm going to make sure they can't climb. That would be disastrous, of course. A couple of pieces of cork. They seem to like the moisture areas, which makes sense for this species. And here we go. If you have any leaves or anything like that up near the sides too close, you can be providing a ladder to disaster. So make sure I'm not doing that. And like I said, this looks bad that I don't have moss as much on this side as I should. But that's just because I set the moss down right before the stream, and I need to find it, and I'll put it in soon. So there we go. Ventilation for these guys, minimal. I've got a few holes on this side, a few holes on this side covered with the nickel tape. So do I have the fast breeding isopod you talked about? I have a couple of isopods that are really fast breeders, a few that are really fast breeders, let's put it that way. So let's look at some of those, shall we? And talk about them. I'm just walking across the room here on my microphone cord, so it takes me a minute so I don't step on anything. This is one of the fastest breeding species that I keep, for sure. Let's take a peek at them, see how they're doing. Oh yeah, they're doing really well. There's just a bunch here. These are powder blues, well, not powder blues, powder oranges, the same species as powder blues. So Porcellio pruinosus, very fast breeders. One of the best go-to isopods for any setup that's not extremely humid and with poor ventilation. If you have decent ventilation with a variety of humidity levels, they generally tend to do really well. They can even do well in fairly arid setups as long as they have a moist hide. I've been keeping this species with my leopard gecko for a good number of years now, probably about 3.5 years, and they do absolutely fantastic in there. So they're great for fairly arid containers, and they breed fast. So hopefully that helped dark reptiles. Oh, you found a few in the garden. Okay, it would be interesting to know what kind. Some species, when they're collected wild, take a little longer to breed, actually, which is kind of funny. Oh, it is. Okay, you do have Lucana service. That's right. Sorry, I'd forgotten that. I should have remembered that. The service means deer, and so it's a reference to their mandibles looking something like antlers, and I should have remembered that, but I did not. So dark reptiles, I'll entertain other questions. I'm just not catching all of them because there are a lot of questions, but... okay, so Correxity, it could be that the type of isopod you have collected might need a dry area, like a moisture gradient. A lot do. Not all do. Some do fine without it, but some need a moisture gradient, and if they don't have it, they will not breed particularly well, and some of them will even die. So that could be what's going on, depending on what species you have. And I'm going to show you the dairy cows I was talking about as one of the fast breeding species that I have. I'm going to change the elevation of the camera a little bit. There we go. Found this lovely piece of oak up in the canyon, and they love this. They've been chewing it to bits, as you can see. There's some milkbacks, some dairy cows in here. This is my smaller enclosure of dairy cows. So Drew, sample, live in the Appalachians in North Carolina, 2 iridescent blue beetle with a huge hind end, shimmering near sapphire blue and metallic color with black underlay. Any idea what it may have been? Wow. Huh. 2-inch iridescent blue beetle. That sounds kind of familiar to me, but I'm not sure. I'm not too up on the beetle species in the eastern United States as much as I should be, so I'm not entirely sure. Do you have any pictures of it, though? Frank de Tank, powdered isopods in your area as soon as you enter the forest. It's all Philoscium muscorum. Interesting. Oh yeah, Ken. Yeah, powder blues they tend to like the southwest. Very true. I even find them in my state, just north of you, in the desert. I've found them in the desert before, so. And mods, that would be great if you could post the website for Jay's Crazy Obsession. That would be awesome. Let's see. I do have some other stuff that breeds fast. So anything, well, not anything. The milkbacks, that's the same species of these, breed pretty fast. I'm going to very carefully switch this over. I don't want to crush anybody. That's where I was before, right? I think. about like that. They really love that piece of wood, going through it so fast. You know what? That's kind of sticking out. I'm not going to close it like that. I'll end up damaging something. I think that's a little better. Okay, let me get some other isopods out. Get one of my milk back enclosures out. This is another same species, different morph that breeds fast. This is, of course, a much smaller colony, but these guys breed really fast. Love these. You can see there are a lot down in the substrate there. I don't know if there are any under there at all. A couple on there, but most of them are on the cork bark or in the leaf litter, it looks like. Like I said, this is a smaller colony, just split it. So not nearly as many as there would be. Let's see. Another one that breeds really fast that I'll pull out here, that's hard to see because they move faster than they breed, is the Florida Fast. It's a really crazy fast species. Let me show you the Florida Fast. Also, the Dwarf Whites breed really fast too, but only when it's warm. If it cools down, they slow down. So just, if you blink, you'll miss this. So, Jordan, how many tips on keeping one side of a substrate dry in my chameleon enclosure? I have a Mist King that goes off twice a day with a dripper. Oh, that's going to be hard, huh? The Mist King is going to, depending on the ventilation and everything, that might be pretty hard. I mean, you must have good ventilation in your chameleon enclosure. I think I remember seeing some pictures of it, and I'm sure you do. But with that much misting, it's going to be hard, huh? And it's a taller enclosure rather than wide, long. If it were longer, it would be easier because you just naturally create a humidity gradient. That's one I got to think about. Okay. And cruxity, it could be the humidity, it could be the ventilation too. Okay, check these out. They're super fast. They're like lightning isopods. Florida Fast. Called fast for a reason. Called Florida for a reason too, because they come from Florida. That one's confused, but still fast. So yeah, these move like lightning, breed pretty fast. Good for humid enclosures. If you can't put powder blues in an enclosure because it's too humid and there's not enough air movement, get these. That'd probably be a good idea in many cases. So Reyes Maroon, getting a lot of little orange beetles in your isopod tank. I would be curious to find out more about these orange beetles. Would love to see them. I'm not sure what you got there. I mean, spider beetles come to mind, but I'm kind of colorblind, so those might not be orange. And they also usually like it drier. And Josh, I agree with you. Powder oranges, or any of the powders, are great for so many bioactives. It's just like dart frogs. I put them in with my dart frogs. They did not do well. It's not enough air movement, too humid. But other than that, pretty awesome. So Lonnie has Porcellio scabbard calicos. You could add some more for genetics. If you can get some of Oren's calico, that's a great species to get. And Chris Stevens, what's my favorite morph of isopods? Or of Porcellio leavis, or which one? Or Porcellionides pruinosus? Ah, I got a blister beetle. Cool. Whoa, Frank the Tank. Powdered isopod with green coloration. That's awesome. I hope you're able to spot one again. Reyes, you kept Cubaris borneo and your whole colony died in a week. That is not a species I've kept, but oh, sorry to hear that. So, still thinking about your question, Jordan. With the shape of your enclosure is going to be tricky. What are the typical sizes of enclosures you have for your colonies? Okay, well, I use this 6-quart tub that we've been looking at a lot of. 6-quart Sterilite tub. Then I do the next size up, which I think is a 16-quart. And then I also have some 28 quarts. And then I also have some other enclosures that I use, but the most commons are the 6-quart, the 16-quart, and the what I believe is 28. But of course, if you saw my video last week, I do have some deluxe enclosures like this one from Tarantula Cribs. This is what my rubber duckies are in right now because they're still a small colony. But I love the visibility here. You can see them from the side. Right in the middle of the screen right now is some fish food. Little bugs on it you can see. Then probably like, let's see, there was another one I wanted to show you. This enclosure is comparable in size to a 6-quart. This is a Iso Viva enclosure. Like another deluxe style enclosure. This is for my high yellows. And I just, I'm just starting out with these. I've only had them not very long, so they haven't started breeding yet. But they're fantastic. At least I don't start breeding. Last I checked them, I didn't see any Munkai in there, but they seem to be doing well. I had a little bit of die-off at first, but that seems to have subsided. I haven't had die-off for a while. And to help combat the die-off, I actually got a few more at the expo because I had some from Jordan that he sent me. And then, or he had sent to me, I guess I should say, which is awesome. And then I had a few of those die-off, and so I got some more and at the expo. And those have done, since then I don't think I've had any die-off. So got 2 different bloodlines in there, which is great. Let's see how the yellow dots are doing. This is another fast breeding species. And, oh, look, we got a super chat. I got to check it out. Looks like Canadian Arthropodic Designs. That's awesome. Thank you. Looks like it doesn't come with a question, but if you do have one, I'm happy to answer, but I really appreciate the support. Oh, here's the question. Do you think dairy cow isopods in a bioactive snake setup would annoy the snake too much? I have a western hognose and they stay buried underground. I have a colony of dairy cows and white dwarfs. Okay, well, this is what I would say about that. There's still some debate over whether dairy cows will eat reptiles. Some people say they do. Some people say they don't, unless the reptile is like dying or dead. Here's my 2 cents on it. You always have to be super careful. But I have a setup with a crested gecko and with dairy cows. They're doing great. They have been doing great for a long time. They're like the best cleanup crew I've ever had with a crested gecko. They clean up better than any others I've used with them. And I don't regret putting the dairy cows in there with the crested gecko. It's working fine. They're breeding. They're doing their job. So the one thing is the crested gecko is probably eating some of them. And the hognose snake, of course, would not be interested in eating them. So you might have an issue there. So I can't say 100% that it would be a great idea. They probably would clean up really well, but my suggestion would be to go with something like powder blues because you know they're safe with your hognose snake. So hopefully that helps. And yeah, let me know if that helps. Hopefully it does. Scientific name of Florida fast is Atlantosha floridana. And yeah, the convexus are crazy tough. And so I'm glad they bounced back. Sorry they didn't do as well for a while when they crashed, but I'm glad they're back. So isopods, when they're male or female, there is a way to tell by the shape of the pleopods, but you have to turn them upside down and look at them there, or put them in a clear container and look from underneath. I usually don't bother. I just get a group of them. It's usually fine. The females, when they are carrying eggs, they have a marsupium, which is constructed of plates called oostegites on the underside, and you can see it. It's very visible. There's like a different color, and there's a structure there. But you have to be really careful not to hurt them. Florida fast I do keep really wet. Strange looking land isopods you keep. Well, it depends on what you mean by strange looking. Strange looking, I do have ones with polka dots on them and things like that. Now these are a very good breeder. These like to be kept with a very dry area and then a moist hide area. but they do extremely well. They are probably the most voracious and fastest breeding of the giant Spanish Porcellio isopods. So let's see. And arthropodic designs, that's another consideration. Yeah, the geckos stay up high a lot of the time, and the snake is not going to do that. So dairy cows don't burrow a ton, but they do burrow some. Yeah, I would say go with powder blues just to be safe. So this particular isopod here is Porcellio ornatus, the yellow dot. And thank you, Lonnie Dupre. That's a good suggestion. I may do that. I pronounce them in the Italian style because I speak Italian, which is very similar to Latin, so that helps. I want to show you guys what these three are doing. They're actually trying to eat me. The one that's on my finger, I can feel it nibbling on my skin. This species is a protein craver. They really, really go after their protein, like Porcellio leavis does and some others. A lot of the Porcellio species are really protein cravers. This is illustrative of that fact. Most of my isopods will eat up the beetle jelly. Every week I change out the beetle jelly. I hydrate it in between, but for my velvet ants and my desert beetles, give them beetle jelly. And then after a week, I rehydrate it again and give it to my isopods. These have eaten a good deal of this. But in most of my other isopod enclosures, if it had been there for a couple of days like this has, would be gone. But these guys, so they're eating it. These guys love fish food because it's full of protein. So let's do some fish food. I'm trying to see where I can put it where it's actually going to stay long enough for them to come get it. And we can watch them eat it. That would be cool. And let's see. Pepe, I've got a question. Wild Porcellionides pruinosus. If they are Porcellionides pruinosus, make sure they have a moist area, but they don't appreciate being all wet as much as some other isopods. They do need a dryish area. They seem to do better with a dry area, so I would give them one. Just do a moisture gradient. Sorry, the camera's falling over. I'm trying to fix it. Okay. Those Porcellionides pruinosus have a moist and a dry spot. So Reyes, I don't actually have dung beetles. I have stag beetles that are all in the larval form right now. Let's see what else. I've got several darkling beetles of different kinds, but don't actually have any dung beetles right now. I see what you're saying, Jay's Crazy Obsessions. Yeah, these guys, it would be interesting to see, because, you know, I try to always have leaf litter in there for them to eat, obviously, and I feed them often, but if I just fed them as much as they would eat, I would be interested to see how fast they would breed. It would take a lot of food, though. But they really go to town on this fish food. It doesn't take them long. Hey, Drew, welcome. How's that Isopod Hunter doing? Curious about that. Is it eating a lot of the isopods? What is the rarest isopod you keep? Reyes? Let's see. The rarest? That is a good question, because some of them are rare in the sense that they're in demand and they cost a lot and it's hard to buy them, like rubber duckies are probably my most expensive isopod, and so in that sense they're kind of rare on the market. They're hard to find with a good price. And then, but they are going down a little bit. And then some of them are probably like not widely kept in the hobby, but they're pretty common in the wild in places, but like, but not super common, like Silisticus convexus. I have those. And not a lot of people keep those in the hobby, or the Porcellio leavis California mix are not extremely widespread in the hobby, but there are plenty of people who have them. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't have any that are super rare. Oh, well, you know, one that's maybe kind of rare would be the Armadillidium klugi Dubrovnik red phase. Recently got those. They're pretty rare in the hobby, but not as much as they used to be. Okay. You think for Armadillium vulgaria moss terrarium would be too moist? Think of going from moss side to a dry sand side. It depends, Levi, on the I would say the ventilation is going to be more important to some idea. I mean, if you have a drier sand side, that's great. That's good for them. But if you don't have enough ventilation for them, they will not do well long term. If you have enough ventilation, you could probably make it work. So Drew, you haven't seen it since. Okay, well, let me know if in a couple of weeks you see a gigantic fat spider because it's eating isopods whenever it wants to. Hopefully it does well. Good place to get some spatulatus. I'm not sure. I don't have that species. I don't think it's on my permit, so I haven't really looked into it a ton. How's the orange project you were working on isolating? Let's see. Oh, is that the Porcellio Hoffman's egg guy? Because that didn't work. Because it turned out that the little ones that were in there that were orange were not Hoffman's egg at all. They were scaber that got in there. So basement pets, that actually happens kind of a lot. The paradox show up in the Armadillo immaculatum, which is pretty cool. And I'm not sure how to say your name, but you have a smiley face character looking like a sideways smiley face. Yeah, they're a good one to sell. So yeah, that may be a way to go. The powders will breed like crazy, and unless you are feeding them off or something, you're going to have to do something with them eventually, for sure. Let's see. I do kind of want to show you my Dubrovnik red phase, because I think they're kind of fantastic. So if everybody's ready for some Dubrovnik red phase, I'll take these Hungry Ornatus off the screen. We'll do that. Don't want that stick sticking out and giving them a ladder to disaster. Okay. Woo! So many isopods on the floor here because I set them down. So Reyes, the orange morph. Actually, what you may have heard that iridovirus can change colors of isopods, generally to a blue or purplish color, depending on the color they started with. And but when they're orange, it's basically there's a defective pathway to producing a pigment that or modifying a pigment. So the gray pigment is an orange pigment that's modified, and if that pathway that tells the pigment to change from orange to gray happens, then they stay orange. So that's why it's so common to get orange isopods, because so many of them are naturally gray and they just need basically one gene to break, and then they do that. So these are my Dubrovnik red face. Really loving these. I hope they breed for me soon. And we can do zebras or Oreos, sure. We can do that. So dark reptiles, giant African land snails on bioactive with powder oranges. Awesome. What's the ventilation like? I'm curious, because I know that the snails like quite a bit of humidity. So I'm curious on what you have there. Oh, Pepe. Most of your yellow dots died. Interesting. That's sad, but do you have any idea what happened? There's some more of them in here. Let's see. So, oh, they're loving the limestone. Excellent. Yeah, a lot of isopods seem to like that. And it's interesting because Oren says in his book that you don't need to put calcium sources in with most isopods beyond what they eat, because things like fish leaves have calcium in them. But some isopods really go for it. Like I put Cuttlebone in with Ornatus because he said they really like it. And I did, and they love it. So this is one of my experiments here. No covering on the ventilation with this particular enclosure because I want to make sure they get tons of air. And it seems to be going fine. I'm not seeing, I mean, usually fungus nets take a while, but I've done this with other enclosures and found that if they have a lot of ventilation, sometimes I don't even get any fungus gnats. So, Armadillo and Vulgare, hello and welcome. Oh, Chris is in the house. Nice. Nice to see you here. I got pretty good ventilation. Both are doing great. Snails and Monkai. Excellent. Major changes to your ventilation since reading Oren's book. Well, I would not have done this with Armadillo and Klugi. This is the ventilation. Let me just show you. I've got this on 4 sides, and then on the edges of the enclosure I have it like this. I would not have done this little ventilation without reading Warren's book with Armadillo Klugi. I think this is enough, but based on what he says, you do need decent ventilation for Armadillo Klugi, and you need a very pronounced humidity gradient or moisture gradient in the substrate. So I've got the moss, but the rest of it's bone dry. That seems to be really good for them, of course. But yeah, the ventilation, basically that is one difference that I made. I would have normally put cut 2 1-inch holes at least in the top, but I seem to be fine. Another example of that is with, I can't see them right now. Where did I put them? Set them down somewhere. But my Porcellio Hoffman's Egg Eye Black, here they are. Let me show you the ventilation on these guys. This is Hoffman's Egg Eye. Most Spanish Porcellio need a ton of ventilation. Wait, hold on. Nope, this is my Porcellio Leaves. Same color of enclosure, sorry. Need to find the, where did I put the black? I don't know, here they are, okay. This is Porcellio Hoffman's Egg Eye Black. So, I've got the tape, the medical tape. I've got this along both sides. So, each side is the same. Big holes along the sides and then smaller holes here. And then a smaller set of holes on each side like this. I would never have done that with Porcellio Hoffman's Egg Eye before reading his book. So, he said that Porcellio Hoffman's Egg Eye don't need as much ventilation as some of the other giant Spanish Porcellio. So, I'm going with that. He knows his stuff and he breeds everything. So, those are 2 examples. I am doing a little bit, let's say, I'm just cutting down on ventilation slightly for some species based on what Warren, experimenting a little bit. So dark reptiles, what isopod should you have? What's the humidity like in that enclosure? Generally, we talked about this a little bit, but I can't remember the humidity and I can't remember the ventilation, but I'd love to help with that. The medical tape. I just got some breathable plastic medical tape. It's 3M is the brand. Let me see. I'm going to pick it up. Transpore. 3M Transpore is the tape. So hopefully that helps. And you can see it's got these tiny little holes in it. And it seems to work well for keeping fungus gnats out. So the book that I have is Isopod Zoology. It's the one that was published in 2019. The jury is still out on how well this works completely. I haven't been using it long enough in as many enclosures as I would like to say unreservedly, I love this stuff, I'm using it for all my enclosures. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it does do a good job at keeping fungus gnats out in the testing that I've done before. Oh yes, so I would say it's worth some trials, but just, you know, be cautious a little bit with it. So Pepe, thanks for joining in. And you're welcome, Chris. Crested gecko terrarium. I would say some options there. You probably want to go with something small and fast because crested geckos, oh, they've pretty much finished theirs off. Their beetle jelly off. Crested geckos, some of them will go after the isopods. Silistixus convexus is a good one because they tend to stay out of the way and move fast. Fairly quickly, so this wouldn't be a bad one for crested geckos. I would say you could go with Silistixus convexus. You could go with dwarf whites, honestly. Dwarf whites do really well in with crested geckos, and they're too small to be of interest to the crested geckos, so that would be an option. You could try Atlantosha floridana, the Florida Fast. And once again, I have had success with Porcellio Leavis because they breed so fast that even though the geckos are picking some of them off, it doesn't seem to matter. So hopefully that helps. So some species you could work with, and let's see, one more I'd like to share with you is we're going to close down in just a second here, but I'm going to show you my high yellow project, Armadillidium vulgare, see how they're doing. These are a line bred group here. And I've got a lot of them in here that are the males, which don't seem to carry the trait, but a lot of them pretty highly colored even as adults. So the line breeding's working. There have been times when I've been tempted to quit because they're they're slow breeders, and you know, this species in general tends to be slow breeders, but some are faster than others. Like Santa Lucia are pretty fast breeders compared to these, but these are pretty great. I mean, I'm getting some wild color variation in here, so if it ever, you know, pans out that I can get them reproducing, I'll be glad. But they look pretty good, if I do say so myself. Been working with them for a long time. It's been years, and for a long time I wasn't getting much out of them. But with culling and whatnot, it started to work. So hopefully, Theropod Hunter, I answered that. Isopod Zoology, that's the one I have. Yeah, his entire library probably. He's got some great stuff going on, for sure, about isopods and all sorts of invertebrates, from centipedes to, there's a nice one. Hard to focus, but there's a lot of nice ones in here now after several generations of culling and stuff. So dark reptiles, where would I go if I could go anywhere? I would go to tropical rainforests and other places of that sort, places with unique ecosystems. Australia is high on my list because of the fantastic and unique fauna they have there. I would totally go to Brazil, Peru, other rainforest areas. I would totally go there, to places like that. I want to go to the Galapagos Islands, but just about any place with an ecosystem I haven't been to. I have some familiarity with Hawaii because I used to live there, but other than that, many other places. This is my Morph mix. Back in the day, I crossed oranges with Dalmatians to produce orange Dalmatians, took out the first cross, which all mostly looked like normal wild types, and crossed those again and got some orange Dalmatians and started my orange Dalmatian group, and then crossed them with the ones that Ryan Orr produced as well, so there's two different lines there. But I left the rest of them together and it created this morph mix, and I've added some others since then. There are some pied individuals, there's at least one pied individual I added recently in here, but I think there's more in there probably as well. But I think it's kind of fun. I mean, they're not expensive or anything, they're not rare, but they're cool looking. Giant cave centipede that resembles a house centipede. Would love that. That is awesome. Thanks, Dark Reptiles, for coming in. And yellow spiny isopods from the South Atlantic. They've certainly got some cool marine isopods, I'll tell you that. I've kept a few of the smaller species just because I've kept reef tanks, and when you keep a reef tank you keep small isopods. You can't really help it. But I would love to do more of that. Toilet Pete, T- albino and clue guy pudding coming tomorrow. Awesome. Very, very cool. I've got some T albinos, T positive albinos, I think, popping out of my orange vigors. I think that's what's going on. Someone was saying those look like T positive albinos, and I thought, oh, maybe they are. Who knows? And so let's see if we can find a few. There's just normal oranges in here too, but I've started separating out the different cultures to see what we can find. Like this one. I mean, that's not orange anymore, you know? And even though this one's not an adult, there are adults that look just like that in here. So pretty bright, kind of a yellowy color. And there are a number of them in here. I don't see any others right now, but I think they're pretty cool. Oh, Frank the Tank, you're probably right. That seems so much, that somehow seems very fitting. I've never tasted them, but that somehow seems like that would be how they taste. Well, I should probably go. I'm a little bit over time, but thanks everybody for joining in on this unusually timed live stream. And be sure to catch my video on Friday. And thanks for joining in. Thank you, everybody.